Good morning, I'm Prarambha Dahal. Let's begin with the main stories. Victims yet to receive justice despite Maoists leading the government several times on the foundation of a decade-long armed revolution. Share grievances of being abused to gain power. More than 20% of the total population of Nepal still under the poverty line. 53% of the revenue being spent on food grains, 12% on house rent. Top leaders of Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz PMLN and Pakistan People's Party PPP discuss a new power-sharing formula. Efforts to form a coalition government gathers pace. And a brace from Conor Gallagher helps Chelsea come from behind to secure a 3-1 win against Crystal Palace. The Blues rise to 10th in the English Premier League table. Statute Convention of CPN Maoist Center has begun today in Kathmandu. CPN Maoist Center chairperson and Prime Minister Pushpa Dahal inaugurated the convention at the Academy Hall in Kamaladi a while back. The Statute Convention, which will continue for 3 days, is to amend the party statute. CPN Maoist Center has already collected recommendations on the draft of the statute amendment prepared by the Standing Committee, even from the lower ranks of the party. The party has said that a few changes are being sought in the organization structure through the statute. The CPN Maoist Center has made preparations to curb the size of its Central Committee. The Central Committee meeting of CPN Maoist Center held before the convention had also discussed on the draft for the new statute. Now, today is 1st of Fagun as per the Nepali calendar, the day the then Maoist rebels started the armed revolution. The armed rebellion that the Maoists started on February 13, 1995 went on for 10 years. The CPN Maoist Center is observing the People's War Day today in memory of the day they started the armed revolution. 66-year-old Meghmali Budamagar of Rolpa's Kodgaon Municipality 6 lost her husband in the 10-year armed conflict started by the Maoists, and the whereabouts of her son is still unknown. Her husband, Prasad Budamagar, was shot dead by the Maoists on the night of March 28, 2002. 5 months after her husband's death, her eldest son, Hira Bahadur, disappeared after the Nepal army took him under control. Meghmali's husband was a simple farmer, while her son, Hira Bahadur, was arrested by the army when he went to visit his younger brother who was studying in Ghorahi. Meghmali, made victim by the state as well as the Maoist rebels, has been urging for the search of her missing son, but her plea has not been heard by anyone. Meena Nepali's 24-year-old husband, Tilak Ram Nepali, was also abducted and killed by the Maoist rebels some 22 years ago. She was made a widow at a very young age of 23, and then she gave birth to a daughter a month after her husband's death. Meena could not provide her daughter higher education because of financial hardship. Meena is still in search of justice even after a lapse of 22 years. During the 10-year armed conflict, 969 people of Rolpa lost their lives, while 33 are in the list of disappeared people. 3,138 complaints have been registered at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, while 126 complaints have been filed at the Commission of Investigation on Enforced Disappeared Persons. Rights activists say that it is unfortunate that the victims of the conflict are still elusive of justice, even as it has been decades since the Maoists entered the peace process, and the Supreme Commander of the Armed Revolution, Pushpa Dahal, is currently leading the government, which is for his 3rd time. The then Maoist rebels had started the armed conflict against the state on the night of February 13, 1995 by attacking police posts and banks in Rolpa's Holeri, Rukum's Atviskot and Sinduli's Sinduli. The Maoists that entered the peace process after the 10-year-long armed conflict have been in the government from time to time, but the CPN Maoist Center has failed to fulfill the aspirations of the people. In our Public Voice segment, we've asked how they take the journey of Maoists from their armed revolution until now. Let us now take a look at what they had to say.
समावेशिताका कुराहरू उठेका छन् संहिताको अभ्यास हामीले गर्दै छौं यो वास्तवमा भने माओवादीको जनयुद्धकै बलमा भएको हो
सत्तामा जाने खेल बाहेकहरु केही पनि भएन
कमरेड प्रचण्डजीले भनेको कुरा केही पनि सफल हुन सके हैन
द्वन्द भन्नाबित्तिकै एकदमै डर त्रास हुन्थ्यो
नेपालमा जनयुद्ध बिना गणतन्त्र सम्भावना थिएन यो व्यवस्थाको जग यो विद्रोहले गर्यो
न अरु जनतालाई फाइदा छ न राष्ट्रलाई फाइदा छ कसैलाई फाइदा छैन
परिवर्तनको साधकको रूपमा लिएको थियो जनयुद्धलाई
जुन उद्देश्य जुन जनयुद्ध थालिएको थियो त्यो उद्देश्य पूरा हुन सकेको छैन
यसले चाहिँ केही
साथीहरूलाई चाहिँ निराशा गराएको छ अहिले।
जनताका अपेक्षाहरू पूरा नभएको हुनाले अर्थहीन।
The government has accepted mistakes in the decision of the Lumbini Development Trust to construct physical infrastructures in the Ramgram area of Nawalparasi, where corporeal remains of Gautam Buddha are enshrined, and has also decided to halt the process. The government is to proceed with the implementation of the decision of the Public Accounts Committee of the House of Representatives to immediately scrap the decision to assign construction responsibilities to the private sector. Now, with this, the irregularities in progress at the Ramgram area are to be halted for now. Concluding irregularities were in progress at the Ramgram area of Nawalparasi, the Public Accounts Committee decided to stop all activities, after which the government began the required procedures for the same. Accepting the mistakes identified by the Parliamentary Committee, Minister for Culture, Tourism and Civil Aviation, Sudan Kirati, who is also the chairperson of the Lumbini Development Trust, informed about proceeding with the scrapping of the agreement. Without following required procedures, the Lumbini Development Trust had reached an agreement of leasing the Ramgram area to a private company named The Promised Land for a period of 99 years for the construction of several infrastructures. Not only many questions had surfaced regarding the agreement, there were suspicions also regarding irregularities in the process. Sunday's meeting of the Public Accounts Committee under the House of Representatives had directed to halt excavation and construction works in the Ramgram area and scrapping the agreement with immediate effect. The committee has also urged the Commission for the Investigation of Abuse of Authority, CIA, to investigate the matter. Meanwhile, the project presented by the Lumbini Development Trust remains to be approved by the government. According to the trust, as the Parliamentary Committee has already issued a directive, the government now holds the right to reach a decision. The population of Nepali nationals consuming fruits has increased from 3% to 7%. Around 2% of the population owns a four-wheeler, 25% has motorcycles, and more than 26% have refrigerators. The fourth Living Standard Survey conducted by the National Statistics Office has shown a rise in the number of consumers of fruits in the country. According to the survey, 20.27% of the total population of Nepal is under the poverty line, which figures at 5.8 million individuals. Prior to this, 25.2% of the population was under the poverty line in 2010-11 period. But the office has said that the findings of the recent survey could not be compared to the previous survey because of the change in indicators for poverty line. Poverty has now been measured on the basis of indicators including consumption of households, their income, access to services, use of residential facilities, education, health, employment, savings and loans, and ownership of land and use, among others. According to the data, 1 out of 5 Nepali nationals live under the poverty line. Of the 7 provinces, poverty rate is higher than the national poverty rate in Madhesh, Lumbini, Karnali and Sudar Paschim. Poverty rate stands at 34.16% in Sudar Paschim, 26.69% in Karnali, 24.35% in Lumbini and 22.53% in Madhesh. Gandaki has the least poverty rate of 11.88%. Per capita in consumption expenditure has increased by 66% from 75,209 rupees 12 years ago to 126,172 rupees. Access to telephone and mobile phones has increased from 61% to 93% during this period. Share of food grains has decreased in the total consumption expenditure, meaning the share of non-food grains has increased. 53% of the total income is being spent in managing food grains, which stood at 62% 12 years ago. The survey has also shown that 12% of the income is spent on house rent. It is now time for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
The question is, what do you term the trend of introducing ambitious budget but making reductions during implementation? Your options are A, impractical objectives, B, failure in spending, C, inadequate resources. Voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001. Time now for the international news. Top leaders of the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz PMLN and the Pakistan People's Party PPP discussed a new power-sharing formula as efforts to form a coalition government gathered pace following a split verdict in the elections. Despite independent candidates backed by jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf PTI party winning most of the seats, questions loom over what the next government in Pakistan will look like. None of the three major parties has been able to secure a majority in the 266-member National Assembly. PMLN, represented by former Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and PPP President Asif Ali Zardari and Chair Bilawal Bhutto Zardari and other leaders discussed the idea of appointing a Prime Minister for half the term during their first meeting last Sunday. The Fair and Free Election Network has called on the Election Commission of Pakistan to address non-compliance by returning officers with legal provisions for transparent election result processes. In a statement, the Free and Fair Election Network said despite generally smooth voting and counting processes, the returning officers in 135 constituencies did not follow regulations, hindering transparency efforts. Lahore High Court Justice Ali Bakr Nazafi has turned down 18 petitions challenging the results of constituencies after the general elections on the basis of Form 47s. The petitions included against those the electoral wins of PMLN leaders Nawaz Sharif, Shehbaz Sharif, Maryam Nawaz, Hamza Shehbaz, Khawaja Asif, Atahullah Tarar and IPP leader Awan Chaudhary. The judge directed the petitioners to approach the Election Commission of Pakistan regarding the matter. Caretaker Prime Minister Anwar ul Haq Kakar rejected the accusations and said there was no manipulation of results and no pressure on the Election Commission to deliver a particular result. He said Pakistan would not investigate allegations of election irregularities just because some foreign capitals had sought a probe and had its own laws to deal with any challenges. U.S. President Joe Biden has said the United States of America is pushing for a 6-week pause in the fighting between Israel and Hamas in Gaza as a stepping stone toward a longer ceasefire. Biden and Jordan's King Abdullah spoke after the two longtime allies held talks in the White House residence. The discussions covered a daunting list of challenges, including a looming Israeli ground offensive in southern Gaza and the threat of a humanitarian calamity among Palestinian civilians. Biden, who has shown increasing exacerbation with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for not heeding his advice, said the United States was working with allies in the region on a deal to pause the fighting to allow Gaza hostages to be freed and the flow of humanitarian assistance to increase. The meeting came as Biden has become increasingly vocal in his demand that Israel not undertake a ground offensive in Gaza's southern city of Rafah without a plan to protect Palestinian civilians. U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller told reporters that without a credible plan that Israel can execute, Washington would not support a full-scale military operation in Rafah going ahead, adding that he does not think cutting U.S. aid to Israel would be a more impactful step than what Washington has done so far. Meanwhile, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte met with his Palestinian counterpart Mohammed Shtayyeh in Ramallah, where they both stressed fears that an Israeli operation in the southern Gaza city of Rafah would deepen a humanitarian crisis where many Palestinians have taken refuge from the Israeli offensive in the Hamas-run territory. Mexican armed forces said they had dismantled a clandestine meth mega laboratory in northern Sonora state, marking the longest or largest drug laboratory busted under the current administration. The Navy said it had seized 4.13 metric tons of methamphetamine or meth and 1.27 tons of precursor chemicals used to make the synthetic drug. The site counted 72 laboratory reactors. It added 5 times more than the 13 discovered at what was previously considered the country's largest clandestine lab, which had also been discovered in Sonora. The United States has been pushing Mexico to crack down on drug trafficking, particularly fentanyl, even as leaked documents revealed the Mexican army revised up the number of drug lab raids it said it had conducted under the administration of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who is in his final year of office. Mexico has meanwhile been pushing for the United States to take a firmer stance on the illicit trafficking of firearms from the United States to drug cartels across the border. Over 5 tons of cocaine were seized from an underground storage in Colombia planned to move to the U.S. market. Colombian armed forces stormed a wooden house in the rural area of Necoclí, North Colombia, where they found a gate on the floor to storage containing the substance. The defense minister said the blow represents a massive $150 million slap to the criminal organization of Clan del Golfo. Colombia is considered the main world cocaine producer with an estimated capacity of 1,738 tons per year in the year 2022. In a whirl of color and music, Bolivia's carnival got underway in La Paz, where dozens showed off their traditional dances. Wearing elaborate costumes, dancers from over 40 dance groups twirled through the streets during the Andean Carnival, which is also known as Yesca Anata. The Andean Yesca Anata celebration is one of Bolivia's indigenous population's most important festivals and involves the combining and coming together of many of the La Paz department's Andean populations. The festival aims to rescue melodies, instruments and dances of the country's indigenous communities. It is now time for the sports news.
Sports news.
Nepal women's national cricket team are playing the Maldives in their last group stage match of the ACC Women's Premier Cup. The match, which is being played at the YSD UKM Oval in Bangi, Malaysia, began a while back when Nepal won the toss and elected to bat. As per the latest update, Nepal have scored 28 runs in 2 overs without losing any wicket. Having secured 2 successive wins, the Nepali Eves are aiming to finish as winners of Group D after seeing off the Maldives in their last group stage match. Team Nepal had secured an 8-wicket win over Hong Kong in their first match before seeing off Bhutan by the same margin in their second match. In quite a sharp contrast, the Maldives lost their both matches and have already crashed out from the tournament, but will be aiming to return home on a positive note. Having lost to Bhutan by 94 runs in the first match, the Maldives were thrashed by a mammoth margin of 172 runs by Hong Kong in the second match. Team Nepal are the only unbeaten side in Group D and have 4 points from 2 matches. The tournament, being participated by 16 teams, includes 4 groups with top 2 teams of each group progressing to the quarterfinal round. 2 teams progressing to the final of the tournament will secure their berth at the Women's Asia Cup slated for later this year. That is all for the moment. Our next English bulletin is at 6 p.m. Thank you for staying with us.